Good evening and welcome. Tonight, where are the fair? Well, we know where some of them are. And straight away, good
Eric!
evening,
Hi, Eric.
Meeting.
Yeah, so it's one of those things with paranormal of late, isn't it? We do find it difficult to find subjects that nobody else is doing. So I apologise now if we're running over some of the ground that other groups are doing. But hey ho, it is what it is. So yes, the fair and where are they? I think the the most logical answer is the scientific one, which is due to 20th century living. Um, we use excessive amounts of electricity, i.e., frequency. You see, um, and it renders these creatures and otherworldly beings as invisible. There's a little bit of corroboration to that if you think about it again logically, because certain creatures are still in existence, they're still being seen, but they tend to be seen in places that are remote, no electricity, but they are fewer and far between. Evening, Irene. Um, so, what's anybody else's take on that so far?
Well, I think a lot of it, anything like that, nature spirits, etc. I mean, if you go back, a few hundred years, we had vast woodlands.
I've lost my hearing.
So in that case, they had a lot of place to dwell. Whereas over time, we've built up. These places are getting smaller. But I've often noticed as well that certain, shall we say, nature stroke elemental things are turning up on investigations. So
Yeah,
the fact that we're encroaching on their lands, they're beginning to come back out.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's the case. It's what they call adapting, I would imagine. Yes, correct.
It's pretty much like, in certain places in America, people are getting Bigfoot in their back garden, aren't they? They've had reports of that happening. And it's the same thing. They're,
Yeah,
they're losing territory, aren't they?
yeah. I think Nettie's having problems with the audio, so I don't think she can hear us. Um, don't know why that is, but I'm sure she'll try and fix it. Yeah, it's just like ordinary wildlife. Come to that, there's so many species now that's learning to live with us, which you wouldn't have seen in your garden. I think one of the latest is wood pigeons. They literally did stick to countryside, but over the last 5 years, they're a regular garden bird now, and they're not skittish anymore either. You can walk up to them.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example of adapting. Adapt. But you can now. So I hope she's off what she's doing. But yeah, I don't know. I hope.
Okay.
I'll just have to do this because of this.
Yeah, I know why. But, I've acknowledged you. So.
I'll do this. Things to come up.
We can hear you in
Brad.
there. The volume's gone.
Technical issues, eh?
Yeah, technical issues. It's them fair. It's that fair, you know. They've been. But then again, I hope she don't start yakking while we're yakking. But so yeah, that's my initial thoughts on it. But again, I think a lot of it, because they're classed as elementals, as you say, frequency plays a big part, and maybe they're starting to readjust, like tuning a radio in.
Yeah. As the saying goes, nature always finds a way.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always been a big believer of. I know it's slightly off piste, but um, it's like with spirit. I did that little experiment. I mentioned it. I can't remember what show we did it, and Ian, I think it was Part at Frequencies where I said that most sightings from people that are not sensitive to spirit see spirit in or around or under high-powered pylons,
Mm.
which causes this static, this buzzing, this
Yeah.
frequency, which renders them visible. Well, I think other elements or elementals are sort of following suit. They're learning to adjust because of all this interference. Maybe they're targeting certain people as well, rather than just being visible to everybody. Because there seems to be more accounts. I don't know whether you've got any or not, but seems to be more accounts of people on a personal level rather than just walking through woods and seeing them like we used to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is the case. Yeah. Very much so. And yeah, as you say, frequencies and us infringing on their territory has caused a lot of change in whether these things get seen or not. But they are creeping back into our territories now. So
Exactly. Yeah. Go on, Nettie. I think we've got some comments.
Yeah. We've got Rita, all the gang, all here, Nettie, Brian, Ian. Can you hear me, yeah?
Yeah.
wait there, yeah.
I just can't hear you. Then we've got
Oh.
Eric. I wonder if they think maybe ready to interact with them again.
Very
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
And we have Eileen. We use a lot of electricity too in Japan. The cryptic creatures like to dwell everywhere, and they are more in the country than our big city in Tokyo.
Yeah.
So that corroborates what I've been thinking, Irene, that yeah, the electricity that we use is not particularly kind to them, because there's a particular one in Japan that's always been part of folklore, which is the soot sprites, and they seem to have scurried off. They don't like any sort of urbanization whatsoever, so they tend to be seen in countryside dwellings. I could be wrong. You can let me know if I'm right or not. But that's just one example. I find that fascinating as well. Around the world, we've got similarities with some elementals, but there's also a lot of different ones. Like we haven't really got an equivalent of soot sprites, which are like little bits of soot, basically, that float about. The closest I think we've got is like little shadow beams, but they're not strictly black like they are in Japan, which is I find fascinating.
I think more of what we've had here is like fae fairies that people have supposedly caught on camera. I mean, we go back to that famous case. Is it legit? Well, the verdict's still out on that one, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, it attracted a hell of a lot of attention. Did that? I know the Dan and that did that one, didn't they, the other week? Cottingley fairies.
Yeah.
That's not too far from me actually, in Bingley. But yeah, I think as Dan said at the time, I think it's a case of there was at least one that was visible, and that prompted them to do more because they were probed. They were asked so many questions, and kids being kids, not wanting to disappoint anybody, they probably did make some things up. But this is where it gets awkward, and it's like did they make it all up? You
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
was it all true? But the fact that they gained so many people of note during at that time, such as H.G. Wells and Crowley and one or two, even Houdini was interested. He went and spent the day with them. They were gaining notoriety all over the world, and I think that as well prompted them to lie a little bit more, even though there was no evidence for it. They'd already presented all the evidence, and that's what got them noted.
Houdini was known for dismissing a lot of things, wasn't he?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if it got his interest, makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Mm. But you think of the people, the names of the day there. God, there were a lot, a hell of a lot, and there was a lot of psychic mediums as well that wanted to interview them. That was the can we call it of the day? Lie detector of the day.
Yeah.
There weren't that technology about, were there? So what did they do? Stick somebody in front of somebody and interview them.
I can't hear you anyway. It's all right. Don't worry about it.
What's up?
They'll just speak a bit louder because I can't hear.
Right.
Let me open this. Coming out. Can't hear a thing.
Yeah, but it's echoing. It's
Is it?
feeding back.
Right, I'll go in there. Just talk louder.
There we are.
I don't know what's happened to it. My sound has just gone.
The Fae, they're interfering.
I know. They better stop.
They've come in from out of the garden.
But that's the thing as well. We were talking the other day, like I said, that, how many people have actually seen things? You said, Ian, you hit on the fairies, for example. That in this country seems to be the thing. More than any other elemental.
Yeah. I mean, I was always pretty dismissive of fairies, but then someone said to me once, "Oh, they are to nature what angels are to us."
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that makes logical sense, actually.
Yeah, exactly. There's other entities as well. But as I said, touched on around the world, every country seems to have a particular one. Now, maybe it's the same, but being given a different name and slightly different features.
Yeah, interpreted differently. Yeah.
Yeah. Still got an echo. Go on, with it.
Right, Eileen says, I'll shut that one and go. She says, after the atomic bomb explosion, there was DNA changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric says, I also think the bomb opened a big doorway into the world, or at least cracked it.
Yeah, very possible.
Eileen, no one wants to research our Bigfoot. He'd be gone.
Yeah.
In and about Hiroshima Mountains.
Yeah.
And then we have Nigel. Hello, Nigel.
Hi, Nigel.
Well, I'm sure me and Dan would go over and investigate your Bigfoot, Irene.
Which one? Yeah, I think that's again that actually does play into what being saying about frequency. I mean, anything with a massive explosion like that's going to it's going to interfere, isn't it? Obviously, for a long time. So, yeah, things are going to emerge or become visible again. Evening, Dan. So, quite possible. And these things, like you say, they are starting to re-emerge, but it's almost like they're reinventing themselves. They're doing it personally rather than in the places where they were originally reported to have come from or be attached to.
Yeah.
No, what's an example? I don't know, a vampire at bottom of ocean type of thing. It sounds stupid, doesn't it? But there's creatures that's emerging from depths that we've never seen before. How
Yeah.
many of these could, back in the day, have been classed as elementals? Were they closer to the surface? Did they come out of water? I mean, we thought the coelacanth were extinct up until 1968, and somebody pulled one out in Brazil. But they lived at depth. They were supposed to have lived at depth. So one of these species that if you tried to bring it to the surface, it would implode. But yet they found a live one. So that threw that out at water, didn't it? Pardon the pun. So yeah. How many? How many? Go on, Annette.
Harry says, I can hear you, Netta. Everyone can hear me.
Yeah, everybody can hear.
We have a few more, yeah, hang on. Irene, our electricity energy is mostly nuclear because we have typhoons and hurricanes.
Yeah.
And there we are. Hello, Jamie.
Jamie.
He says, hey up, Bri and Ian and Netta.
Evening, fella. Good to see you.
I've got Eric. I've seen black-like creatures running up and down trees growing up. Kind of like little shadow creatures.
Yeah, again, that seems to be what's the word for those? I'm sure Dan would tell me. The innocent elemental. So they seem to be seen by children more than adults.
Yeah.
I really, like I've said, soot sprites and things like that. They seem to be something that kids will actually interact with, like a invisible friend, and they fade and disappear as people get older, and they see less of them. Why that is, and again, I think it's possible that because we do change frequency through a life cycle.
Yeah.
So that again, frequency difference in the reception, shall we say, like a radio.
Yeah.
Maybe we have to retune, and that's why psychics and mediums maintain some sort of rapport or ability, because we're constantly evolving as in his abilities. Go on, Nettie.
Harry says, we deter from having cryptid creatures in our house because you can't get rid of them. They can be a pest to the living.
Ah.
She says, I will speak to the dead before I talk to the living.
Yeah.
It's one from Dan. That was why Sir Arthur Conan Doyle fell out with Houdini, purely because of the difference of opinion over Cottingley.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Irene says, would fairies be a part of this folklore?
yes.
Yeah. I think it's probably they're the most frequent thing in folklore, aren't they? But although by different names.
They are, and the interesting thing about fairies per se, is originally all accounts of fairies were more of like evil little sprites. They weren't depicted as nice creatures whatsoever. It was only till certain things occurred they became more customer friendly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And portrayed in a nice light. So surprising again, and things do change, and our perception of creatures change. So again, this is why I think that it's so much supposition and woven into folklore, that and they change throughout the world. I mean, most countries have got leprechauns of some sort or another. Now we know that it's Ireland that the most famous because they've adopted them as a national creature almost. So that's why the tradition is strong there, and an image as well. If you look at the original images of leprechauns, they weren't what they portrayed to be today. And through horror movies, they gained bloody fangs. Also, so images change. So how much is actual real and how much isn't? How far back can you go? And what sort of account was it that set it off? And I think that's important. I really do think that's important because some things have been woven in through film again.
Yeah.
So they've been given an image, a strong image of what that author wants them to be. Now, when it comes and you go further back and further back where there's no film or anything, no cameras even, these things were drawn. These things were woven into folklore like gargoyles on a church.
Yeah.
So that's your first part of imagery. How much of that is just a personal account? Who drew the first picture? You know what I mean? It's like, how far back can you go? It's awkward, and this is when it gets confusing. Go on, Nettie.
Right. Eileen said they don't talk about fairies there. And she says, come and visit. Come and visit me too.
Yeah.
She says, the scientists say we have Godzilla living near volcanoes.
Well, yeah.
And Dan, I believe that a lot of activity that we experience is down to the Fae as opposed to that of the human spirit. It's just that our interpretation is off, but the patterns are similar.
Yeah.
And then he said, I think the Bigfoot is possibly a nature spirit, elemental, and therefore possibly a member of the Fae.
Yeah, you see, again, these are where lines get blurred. I mean, there's that many cryptids that could be, because the visual representation of them is different. I mean, look at Cannock. Cannock, for all intents and purposes, the accounts that you get, the written accounts, suggest that they're werewolves. The visual accounts suggest that there are subspecies, different dogmen. So, again, where do you go with it? I think it needs another comprehensive research, bit like Nettie. You see, the difference there is you could research, you could look up, you could stake out in Cannock. It's feasible. The problem with Loch Ness is it's that deep and that long.
Yeah.
You can't be everywhere.
No, the problem, the likes of Loch Ness, as you say, is so deep and it's connected to the sea, and you know the chances of Nessie actually being there at that particular time are quite limited. So,
what's that one, Nettie?
Dan says Cannock is very interesting. It is.
Oh, definitely.
It is. There's another place that's emerging though as well, because there is a couple of guys that's been doing it for the last few years now. I'd love to meet up with them and see what there is, and that's at Bempton Cliff. There's a small area there. I'm saying small. It's small to a lot of people, but it's big enough and remote enough for cryptids to live there, and they're looking for some sort of big cat or that type of not dogman, not wolfman, but wolf. Believe it or not, they seem to think that it's possible to be a wolf. So that's interesting, and I keep trying to follow him, but he keeps disappearing off the face of Earth. So I'm going to have to have another search for him. But that's interesting research. They've been doing it a few years.
We have one from Dan. I've been researching dogman, and they seem to be predominant around ancient burial mounds, which to me makes them seem like a form of guardian.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. It's
It-
like you know, going loosely back to witchcraft, where witches used to protect certain areas in their town, which they, for the thanks they got for it afterwards, but there you go. They would summon something to protect, the waterways, and I think a lot of what people are coming up against when they there's a demon in the forest. No, it's an elemental that's been conjured to protect something, and you're stepping in that area.
Yeah.
And that could be, Bigfoot, a dog man, a guardian. A guardian could be guarding anything. An area of nature. Burial mounds, and if
Yeah.
these things have been, summoned to do that, they're still going to be there, aren't they?
Yeah,
I would imagine so, yeah, because there's a lot of things today that back in the day, you summoned someone and then you sent them, you put them back to rest, shall we say. There
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be any rituals these days to send someone home or let them go back to sleep type of thing. They just open the portal basically and leave them to roam, which is not good. It's not how it was meant to be.
no.
Go ahead. Go on, Nettie.
Dan said a pagan protector, if you like. Exactly, Ian. Spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like you say, Bright, whoever summons them, if unfortunately they burnt her at the stake because they thought she was a witch because, they had a bad crop that year. I mean, that's no one knows it's there.
Yeah, and actually that you've mentioned a particular, what shall we say, practitioner that still exists today, but the play at it. Back in the day, they were essential part of a village, which is a witch.
Yeah.
Because they were a practitioner, they were a healer, whatever you want to call it. And I think they used to recruit a hell of a lot of elementals. What we call creatures, obviously, toads, mice, cats. They've all got an equivalent in folklore that of what's the shapeshifting and elemental creatures. Like these toads would stand up on two legs
Yeah.
and start walking.
See, that in itself, you saying that, bro, that in itself is, at one time they were nature, and now we've invited a lot of them into our homes. We've all got pet cats, dogs, frogs, spiders, you name it. So it looks like an open invitation for everything else to come in, doesn't it?
Come on, Wales. Yeah, I think you've hit on something there, and this is why I think the lines are getting blurred. And they have to adapt. They can't be seen as wood sprites anymore because they're not in woods; they're in your closet.
Yeah.
So
Eric,
go on.
Eric says, I never thought of it that way, and that would make more sense than them being interdimensional. Interdimensional, yeah.
Interdimensional, probably. I don't think he means, dominatrix.
No. Bad boy.
Yeah. That is another thing, though, isn't it? I mean, I do keep mentioning film and science fiction and these films like Spiderwick Chronicles and one thing and another. Where do these people get their ideas from? I mean, it's a fantastical imagination to be able to come up with a full film of creatures like that.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some sort of foundation in something they've read, something that's led them to think and feel that way. And then a film is born, but where's its roots? It might be a fantasy film, but are the ideas fantasy? Another perfect example, off on a tangent, down a rabbit hole, is films that horror films, for example. I've mentioned this one before, The Hills of Eyes. It's actually based on a true story.
Yeah.
It touches on a little bit of what Irene was saying about radiation, one thing or other. The deserts where they were testing nuclear ordnance before they realised, what damage it would cause.
Mm.
These people were living in these places and ended up being mutilated. Now, a lot of people call them inbred, call them what you like, it's only an opinion, but they're mutilated and they had to survive. So they became cannibals in a way. Anybody that came into area, if they weren't family, they were game.
Yeah.
And it sounds fantastic, but it's actually born in fact.
Yeah.
So if that's a fact, what else is going to be fact? What is possible to be fact?
Exactly.
Dan says, I often wonder if the stone circles and standing stones are portals for them.
Yeah, you see, I wouldn't say portals myself. I would say
I would
places
say more ceremonious towards them.
Yeah, a place to worship and maybe towards elementals rather than anything religious. I think those ideas stepped in afterwards and have been stolen or adapted, just like a lot of pagan rituals have been woven into Christianity. So yeah, I think there's something in that, Dan, definitely.
Yeah, Eric says a lot of other beings had to already be here before we were ever in being.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely. And not only that, it's very possible with enough intent to actually, create these things.
Yeah. Again, it's all a form of summoning.
Yeah.
And I mean, who knows what is possible for us as humans to create? Because if you go that one step further and realize we only use 5% of his brain capacity, maybe a lot of these things that we're seeing, we're creating in his own mind's eye, because we have to have an element of sanity. And for us to think of something too fantastical would send us insane. So it's our brain's way of coping. If something is not too threatening, we can change that image in his mind.
Yeah.
An example of that, I know it's on a tangent, but again, there's certain, I can't say it now because the laws are changing and this, that, so you've got to be careful what you say. But there's a certain organisation that don't want you anywhere near their property. This is diplomatic. So they project images whenever you're around them or near them. That there's people involved that transplant memories or thoughts into your head. So there's all us three are walking in and around this area where they don't want us. Your worst nightmare is clowns. My worst nightmare is werewolves, and Nettie's is vampires. We're all looking at the same thing, but we're all seeing different because it's been projected on us. How much of that could be possible? Go on, Nettie.
Dan says a Stargate for elementals, and you have to remember these elementals are the old gods.
Yes.
And he says also,
yeah,
they were and still are. They are and still are worshipped. Yeah.
Yeah. Various countries we've got that's what I was mentioning earlier, and this is why I think as well. You're going back to ancient aliens, that sort of prophecy where different gods they shared it. Basically, we were an experiment. This planet's an experiment. See, I've got so much fantastical ideas in my head as well, Dan. But, we'd have to have a really good master. But They shared it, so different species of aliens or elementals or whatever you want to call them, put them into any category you want. But they're in there somewhere along the line. And there's, I can't think of any ancient Egypt names for them. But if you keep looking or go back even further or come further forward, it would be the same person. They've just changed the name. The image would be similar, but it's not exact.
Yeah.
What they call them? The Horus.
Yeah, Horace.
They're Egyptians. There's something very similar for South America, and their pyramids. They were all built around the same time when there was no intercontinental travel. So how did it happen? You know.
Yeah.
But they're all made slightly different. Your South American pyramids are stepped. Your Egyptian pyramids are smooth. And I think we're all aliens competing, or we'll get as minions to build them like this. The thing that they've got in common is when they excavate them, you've got little chimneys, for lack of a better word, or skylights, and they point, if you go back in time, to constellations. And these constellations are all the same.
Yeah.
So
Every-
this is where
all pyramids around the world are all in a line with Orion's belt.
yeah, there you go.
Now, how did they do that? Here, there, and everywhere.
Exactly. So again, there's got to be some truth in it, you see. Go on, Nettie.
Rita says awesome live, Nettie Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan says great point, Bri. We've got Eric. I actually heard someone say why our DNA has changed. It's because it was changed from a species that already existed here, which is what we call Bigfoot.
Yes, I've read up on this. I actually think that Bigfoot could be our ancestor, and this is why Darwin's theory, although not completely right, because our DNA is closer to pigs than monkeys, but there you go. It's possible, even possible from an alien point of view, that they changed something in our DNA, so we adapted from Bigfoot. Now they're scared of us, which is why they keep away. But that could be our original ancestor. Very possible.
You see, again, I'll take it because that account, okay, fine, it's an account. It's for me, it's not exactly feasible. And I know what you're saying about DNA as well, because a dolphin's closest DNA is a sheep. You know, landlocked in a waterlogged. So yeah, there is anomalies there, or you'd think there are anomalies. You have to be, I think, in that field to understand that, because it don't make sense to us laymen. But where Bigfoot's concerned, if you actually look at all the hominids from scratch, as we started to stand up from apes and evolve, there was quite a few. There weren't just your Homo sapiens and your Neanderthals, and there were a few that branched off. Now, quite a lot of them perished. Some of them, in fact, because there's good accounts that Neanderthals actually started to breed with Homo sapiens. So there's still part of their DNA present, even though it's not a dominant part.
Yeah.
Featured, you can't see it, but it's in there. I think Bigfoot is one of the branches that it's just stayed very, very small populations. And because of their nature being secretive, they've stayed that way. It's part of their nature, part of their makeup. So they're never going to be abundant. But that's true of a few species. If you go back and look at the species that haven't evolved, like chimps, there's a few species of chimp people don't realize. The most intelligent one, but the smallest, is the bonobo. But that population is small. They are very intelligent. They realize the like tribals in all these rainforests. There's no point out overpopulating your surroundings, and these bonobo don't, which is why they actually have recreational sex. The only apes that are known to do it, such as same as us. So I think there's more common sense in that thesis, that it is a branch of humanity, or it came from the same rootstock, but they just decided that's where they wanted to be, maybe because of how they look and how big they are. Vanity.
Right, Rita, do not put anything in Dan's head. We will be in trouble. And Dan says, Asian DNA is different from Europeans. Yeah, it's all.
Yes, exactly.
None of us are the same, are we?
Yeah, because we've evolved. We evolved different, obviously. The more you breed with a particular bunch, shall we say, the more you're going to gain features that are different to another bunch. I.e., an easier way for people to grasp it is dialect. Back in the day, we evolved and we come together in little bunches and we developed a dialect. It's not until later that people have expanded and evolved outwardly that dialect gets altered, because you're mingling with other dialects, so it gets changed. Same thing with DNA.
Yeah, and depending on where in the world you are, your DNA is going to change because you're adapting to your surroundings as well.
Yeah, correct.
It's like, Eskimos, they're far better with cold conditions than we are.
Yes.
And to them, that's normal. Where
exactly.
If you chucked them in California, they probably drop dead.
Well, exactly. That's a perfect example, of ancient DNA in that respect. And I mentioned Neanderthals.
Yeah.
Well, their nasal passages were adapted to that cold air. They could smell and breathe and carry on hunting, a bit like a wolf. They weren't very fast, but they could plod on at a pace for quite some time. Due to the nasal passages being able to breathe, well, Eskimos retain that.
Mm.
So, again, that's DNA for you in action.
Yeah.
Dan says they think it's down to someone interfering with the DNA way back. Well, that's the theory.
Mm.
And I think it's quite possible when you go back to ancient alien theory, because we were experimented with. They wanted their populations to be different, and it could explain, doesn't necessarily, but it could explain blacks, white, Asians, Indians, all ethnic differences, and there is differences. Not so much now, but back in the day when they were first set on that path, I think there was even more difference than what there is now. I mean, look at Australasian Aboriginals. Their DNA is different. They look different to us, don't they? They're adapted to their environment. They can walk about for months.
Yeah, they got built-in compass, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think there's a lot in it, definitely. But that's gone off on a tangent. I think we need to get back to the Fae.
Eric, you only have to change one tiny molecule to change DNA. Yeah.
Very true.
Exactly. And that's why that film, God, what do they call it? It shows him come to Earth a little bit like Silver Surfer, and he drops some stuff in water, and then that sets us on a different path. What do they call it? Oh, it'll come to me. It usually does. But that just shows that theory in action, that they seeded us. Basically, they seeded us. And I do believe that we spent time off planet. The belief for that, I'll tell you, reason for that is our imagination yet again, and accounts sci-fi films where you've got people that's living on these planets with purple trees and green skies and yellow grass and stuff. But our actual DNA has changed. I mean, we've got organs in his body that there's no use for them whatsoever, and there's no real reason why they should have been there in the first place, unless they were needed for a different atmosphere, i.e., appendix, for example. So yeah, there's quite possible. We've been, and the reason for that, I've mentioned that, I forgot to mention that, but is we've got an extinction belt on this planet where there's a missing link in 99% of species. Where did they all go? And how did we get back? Well, the missing link is the bit where we're 3/4 way stood upright in it, when you look at his evolutionary chain. But it's the same for most creatures, which that's not taught. But maybe we were taken off. When we had this cataclysm that's written in the Bible, ark, maybe it wasn't a terrestrial ark, it was a spaceship. It took us off. We evolved somewhere else, and then we were brought back when the coast is clear. And hence, this is how we are today. That's a theory.
Yeah, well, it's going along the same lines. I mean, it says in the Bible that God is a celestial being.
Yeah, correct.
That could be interpreted in two ways, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the books on religion are Chinese whispers at end of the day, so he's trying to interpret it the best way that you see fit. Any given person sees fit. And to me, I'll try to make sense of something. I'll try to make it work in reality. And for me, that's the only thing that makes sense. We were taken off and we were brought back. Mixing religion with reality. That, because I'm not religious, but I'll look at it as Chinese whispers. There's got to be a little bit of truth in most things. It's just somebody's account of it. You've got to reread that. But you can't read it through their eyes, so what makes sense? It's like in Jurassic Park when there's missing DNA for these dinosaurs. So what do? Use an equivalent, a frog. It'll work for a time.
Well, yeah. Plus the fact with anything like that, you don't know the intent. You don't know the intent in the way that things were written either, do you?
No, exactly. Well, and again, I've always said this one as well, which gives a perfect example. Robin Hood and Ivanhoe, same person, one written from Saxon point of view, one written from Norman point of view.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, it's exactly the same story. And back in the day, there was only certain people could read and write, and they tended to be clergy.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got two ruling classes: Saxon Church, Norman Church. So
I think they got most of the information from song, didn't they?
Well, it's possible.
Yeah.
But it's all Chinese whispers at the end of the day.
Eric said the Bible was mistranslated anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, didn't they? They found when the Ten Commandments are written down in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are supposed to be a exact copy of the originals. And the commandments aren't written exactly as they were. So, thou shalt not kill. There's actually another sentence to that, and it's completely missing.
Yeah. Plus,
and it's probably thou shalt not kill except in self-defense, and it's probably something like that. But they've just cut it off. That'll do.
Yeah, because translation, it gets lost in translation.
Yeah, and there's 13 books that are missing.
Yeah,
which are probably in the Vatican. But
who says there's 13 books though? And how do they know? Have they seen them?
Suppose it. Well, by looking at old scrolls and that, they've deciphered that there's 13 books missing. One was written by Mary herself.
Yeah.
But there is talk that perhaps some don't quite suit modern day religion, so they were taken out.
Yeah. Go on, Natty.
Dan said the Dead Sea Scrolls are 10,000 years old.
Hmm?
And Eric, they found 2 different sets of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, there were some. These ones, I think, were. They found them in the hills, haven't they? When the hills have been eroding away, suddenly these openings appear, and they found them. They're all buried in little tunnels in this hill.
Yeah.
And was it the Library of Alexandria? I think they've got
Yeah.
some from, haven't they?
Yeah.
But the ones they have found do match. If it's the same book, they match. So
Which
just
brings
shows
us
you
full-
that translation later on has completely gone up in the air, hasn't it?
Well, exactly. Which brings us full circle. Why did they put these scrolls in all in a hillside? You know, maybe there was some fae that was guarding them, or meant to be guarding them. You see, they do. They cross paths all the way through. Even in religion, there's certain creatures that are mentioned. In Greek mythology, you've got gorgons and things like that. I mean, how many of these are, as I said earlier, actual existing creatures?
Yeah, you don't know, do you? I mean, it's
No.
quite feasible. It's quite feasible that unicorns existed, which people, a lot of people did. Yeah, it's fairy tale, but it's quite an easy one to accept when you think about it, isn't it?
Well, there's one going on that I've just been mentioning in Land and Sea. There's one that were thought to be the mermaid equivalent of a unicorn, which is a narwhal.
Yes.
For years and years and years, they thought they were a mythical creature until they found one, caught one.
I was watching a documentary the other day where marine biologists have actually got evidence of mermaids, haven't they?
Hmm?
They found a corpse, although there were bits missing. But these guys they were down in a submarine checking to put pipelines in or something, and they were down in off the coast of, was it Greenland? And they actually caught what they suspect is a mermaid on camera. 2 cameras in a mini sub.
Yeah.
This thing put its hand up against the screen and they caught it on 2 cameras. So they couldn't fake it. But this marine biologist was like, whoa, you've caught one.
That would come into Atlantic territory as well.
Yeah. So
Eric says, I should have found more of them recently, like 4 or 5 years ago. Dan, there's a pyramid in Egypt that predates Christianity by thousands of years. And at the opening there is a hieroglyphics, the Lord's Prayer.
Right.
Eric said, yep, he heard that, Ian. And Dan says, yeah, I saw that.
I mean, a lot of pyramids will be way ahead of Christianity, because the Bible was only written just less than 2,000 years ago. So, and it wasn't even written by the people that were there. This is one of the things that come out when they found. Was it the books of the disciples? Wasn't written by them. It was written by people 100 years after they died. So how accurate are they?
Exactly.
You know,
all whispers.
It's
Eric says, yeah, and they are not pretty like the myths.
no, they're not. Yeah, even this marine biologist, there was another mermaid that apparently turned up body of a mermaid turned up on the beach somewhere and it had this wig on it, and the guy just went, "Well, that ain't real, is it?"
But you know, Ian, I'm more likely to believe something when there's skeletal evidence, if there is little bits missing, because for me, something that's ancient, for there to be nothing missing is far fake. It's fake.
Yeah. The actual body that they got, they've actually DNA'd it, and they were also looking through. There was a one of these circus act, where the freak show people actually bought a mermaid.
Yeah,
He had one before, but they said no, that was a monkey's top half stitched to a fish.
yeah,
So although it made him loads of money at the time, but he actually got hold of this other one, and when they saw the photograph, he said it was burnt down. The place it was being stored got burnt down. All the freak show things were ruined. But
Yeah.
they actually found some photographs, and it actually matches this corpse that they've got.
exactly. Yeah,
So, and he said, look, it's got the ridge on the head. So did the one in this video. So the possibilities beginning to look more likely that they do exist.
and again, go on, Nettie, I'll let you read that out.
Yeah, Dan says the Book of Enoch is another one they removed from the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's a few things, but yeah, answering you, Ian, it runs into that elemental records.
Yes.
You know, how much is actual truth and how much is folklore type of thing. And
But
fantasy.
you know, it's like what people are seeing here. Bigfoot. 1 minute you can't see it, next minute it's there.
Yeah.
Oh, mermaids on that same thing.
Mhm.
Can they be seen when they want to be, and completely elusive when they don't?
Yeah, I'm not for the. I've got to admit, I'm not for this theory that it's dimensional thing. I really don't think it's that, because if you got the ability to do that, I would absolutely bugger off to another planet.
Yeah, we would.
Anything with intelligence would, to be honest, wouldn't they? You know what I mean? Rather than stay in that place and be persecuted. No, I'm not for that one. But I don't think there's a possibility of stealth, like you said, some sort of not technology, ability of stealth. I mean, there's what they call that fish now. It's a particular fish, and it's not a small thing neither. It can grow up to about 13, 14 foot, but it hangs in water in such a way, facing uphill, and its skin is that reflective that it's effectively invisible.
Yeah.
Unless it's viewed from a different angle.
Or unless it's dying for a crap. Yeah.
Yeah. But, so yeah, I think I don't know. Maybe they have got some sort of again, not technology but ability.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right, Dan says these things are like truth wrapped in myth to hide the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric
a bit like everyday
says,
life.
I'm thinking a lot of sightings are accidents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are. Even with ghosts. You know, it's not most ghosts' intention to scare us. They don't realise we're suddenly going to see them.
Yeah.
You know, probably most ghost sightings are accidental as well.
Yeah, well, again, that actually may come under maybe something in what I'm saying here with the theory that I've got with frequencies and high-powered pylons. It renders spirit visible while they're near them or under them.
Yeah.
A little bit like an infrared camera trap.
Yeah.
Now, maybe there's something similar to that with frequency, and these Bigfoot can know where these little stations or pockets are.
Yeah, I know where I've caught apparitions on camera doing private cases, it's always been on full spectrum.
There
And
you go.
because before they enter the room, they can't really see it.
Yes.
And we actually had we caught one figure on camera, actually walked in, looked at the camera, sort of had a look of, oh shit, and then walked out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's fascinating. Go on, Nettie.
Eric says, ask Dan, think of it this way, a polar bear's hair is not white, it's clear. And then Dan says,
Yeah.
it's actually blue, Eric, and hollow to retain heat, and that's why it's translucent.
Yeah.
And with that, we've come to 9 o'clock.
Well,
Yeah.
we have. Blimey, that
See?
been quick.
9 o'clock.
They always do, don't they? Let's face it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I hope we've enlightened some people or left question marks in people's heads, and room for debate, room for further debate.
Room for debate.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Yes.
And so it's for tonight. It's good night from me.
And good night for me. And don't forget to catch all the other shows on the Simply Spooky Network, which you'll find on their page.
Correct. Thank you very much. And it's good night from me. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. Bye.